Hey everyone, this is Dr. T again, and for today's video, as promised, we are going to analyze the good, the bad and the ugly of Stephenie Meyer's Midnight Sun. So if you guys don't remember the Twilight series, or if you would like a thorough book review of the Midnight Sun first, before the analysis, head back to the video that I posted, but don't forget to check out the description box below. I also give timestamps for you to fast forward the video so that you get the crux that you want to, and all the relevant information. And if you want to just skip over my commentary altogether, that's completely up to you. And don't forget to come back and check this video out as well. So for today's video, my main goal is to give you a lot of personal theories and a lot of analysis that I did while reading this book. So as a bookworm, I generally finish my books within 4 to 5 days. However, Midnight Sun took me, well, if I'm honest with you, 10 days to read this book. For a person like me, it is really long. I'm sure a lot of you feel differently. As a 24-year-old reader, I read this book when I was in school. It was one of the first books that I read. So contrasting from how my ideologies were formed then and how those have differed over the last 10 years is something that I want to talk to you about. So while reading this book, there were a lot of pages that I had issues with, a lot of instances which did not make me feel too comfortable. There was a lot of in-depth emotion that Stephenie Meyer tried to convey through her writing. A lot of concepts and a lot of ideologies you get to know when you read in between the lines. There was also this beautiful legend reference of Hades and Persephone. That also I have explained in one of my videos before. If you guys want to check that out, go ahead and don't forget to come back here and check out this video as well. Before we go any further, don't forget to hit like, share, subscribe, and now we'll get started. So I ordered the Midnight Sun through Amazon during the pandemic. However, when I first got it, I was super excited and I started reading it the day I opened the package, that is 2 days after quarantine. Okay, so when I started reading this, of course, like I expected, the writing was very similar to Twilight. By similarity, I mean the instances, the flashbacks that she gives in school, everything was fine and going good. So first I'll start with the chapters that I really liked and instances that I was looking forward to Stephenie Meyer writing on, and she did. So as a reader, I was very happy to read those. The bad and what she could improve on later is something that I will also specify for you. So if you guys have your own reviews, don't forget to leave them down in the comment below. I would love to hear your take on it. Alright, so coming to the Midnight Sun book review, first the good part. The best part of this entire series was that Stephenie Meyer took into account very consciously the timeline that Edward had been converted into a vampire from. So what I mean by that mainly is that in this book, Edward refers a lot of times that he is already 80 years old or 70 to 80 years old. So we can take that average. Now, being converted in a time where Spanish flu was so rampant, Edward's society ideologies were thoroughly grilled in him. A lot of conservative ideas about his soul, about himself, about the concept of hell, heaven and damnation. Those were the concepts which were heavily seated in this book, and that is the spin that Stephenie Meyer tried to play on Edward. This goes directly in contrast with what we read in the Twilight series. Twilight, being from Bella's point of view, was about a girl who is now in a modern age group. Her ideas of soul, her ideas of damnation, of hell and heaven, and who deserves to be punished, who deserves to be loved are very different. Those were the ideologies that I could identify with. However, Edward's mindset was really twisted and was really convoluted for me to understand at first. And I took about 3 days, if I'm being honest with you, to sit back, relax, take a deep breath and try to understand from where Edward was coming from. So having told you that gist, let me start with the instances that I absolutely loved in this book. So the first thing that I noticed was the superpower of Edward was given its absolute due. By superpower, I mean Edward is a mind reader. He can read the minds of a vampire, of a human and also of werewolves if they are in the proximity of his radar. So because of that, we see a lot of dynamics which have been going on around Bella. By that I mean her schoolmates and her friends and how they perceive her. All those thoughts were very well conceptualized by Stephenie Meyer through her writing. She told us the point of view of Mike, who was always jealous of Edward because he was getting the attention of Bella that Mike could not get. She also specified on the bitchiness of the friends that Bella was surrounded by, especially Jessica. because Jessica had a thing for Mike and she did not like the fact that Mike was giving Bella more attention than her. So the actual bitchiness of a high school was also well portrayed. There are a lot of instances where Edward feels a twang of jealousy towards Mike when he sees that Mike is drooling over Bella. So all of these instances are comical, hilarious, and they give Edward's superpower its absolute due. So being a mind reader and getting to know the thoughts of other people around him and what the dynamic actually Stephenie Meyer tried to show in between the lines of Twilight have been given their on-the-nose due here. The second thing that I really liked about The Midnight Sun and Stephenie Meyer's writing was that she gave due to the family bonds that Edward shared. In this book, a lot of times Edward says that he belongs to a family, which is a very stark difference from what other vampires perceive their group as. The others call themselves a coven, but Edward used the word family to specify on the fact that he shared more intimate and more happy bonds with his siblings and his parents, that are Carlisle, Esme, Alice, Jasper, Rosalie and Emmett. So we see that Edward relies heavily on Alice's predictions. He always wants to know what will happen next in his future if he takes a particular step. He pesters Alice to show him all the alternate futures that could be if Edward decides to stay permanently in Bella's life. One vision that Edward sees in Alice's head that he absolutely dreads, that I've also mentioned in my review of The Midnight Sun, is that he does not want Bella to get converted into a vampire. This is the one thing that Edward wants to avoid at any point. During this entire book writing, we see a lot of instances where Edward is in polarized emotions. At one point of time, he says that Bella is his sunshine and he cannot leave her. In the other point, we see that Edward views himself as a monster and a damned soul, and he does not want the same fate to fall on Bella's soul. He feels that he, being an immortal, is responsible for taking care of her and protecting her from every evil in this world, including himself. And yes, I use the word evil because that is how Edward describes himself. So in this book, we also find how Alice's mind works. As a reader of the Twilight series, or if you have watched the series, you see the graphic representation of Alice's futures. As a reader, the biggest curiosity that I had was to see how Alice actually perceives these futures. The main crux is that whenever any person decides on a particular path and is fixed on it, the future that Alice perceives changes. So every time Edward took even the slightest decision, she finds his threads unwinding. And those are the threads of the future. So if you guys haven't read Midnight Sun and if you want to read just a few particular chapters, this is one you should definitely turn to, and you would love how Stephenie Meyer describes the entire scenario of the changing futures. That chapter is The Knot. The third thing that I really liked about Stephenie Meyer's writing was that a lot of things and a lot of information about characters was not exactly on the nose. So you had to read the book and read in between the lines to get to know more about the characters. So that came out very well. As a reader, I was engaged and I was looking forward to what would come next. The fourth thing that I really liked about Stephenie Meyer's writing was about Rosalie. Rosalie was a vampire that was converted by Carlisle about a few years after Edward was made. So it is easy for us to presume that Edward and Rosalie were born during the same time period. So a lot of concepts that Stephenie Meyer tries to portray in this book are very consistent with the thought process that a person would have coming from that era. In the Twilight series, Rosalie, up till the Book of Eclipse, has been portrayed as somebody who is anti-Bella. Whenever Bella would profess her intentions of being converted into a vampire, Rosalie would always be against it. So we see her like a villain and we see her like a person who does not want Bella to be happy. However, a lot of misconstrued concepts like these have been given the absolute due in The Midnight Sun. So as I was reading The Midnight Sun, this was my personal take on the whole concept, so here goes. Edward and Rosalie were changed when the concept of society was very conservative. Like Edward, even Rosalie felt that immortality and being a vampire is something of a curse. Being from the 19th century background, Edward and Rosalie had one concept very well engraved in their minds, and that was of damnation. Being converted into a vampire in their minds ultimately meant that they were giving up on life, they were giving up on a bountiful future. Rosalie, being a woman, had another concept very well engraved in her mind. Being from that conservative background, The one thing that was in her head was that she wanted to have children. But because being an immortal does not allow her body to have that capability, she had actually sacrificed something to be immortal forever, which according to Rosalie was not the way to live. She viewed Bella as a person who had the choice to have a family, who had the choice to live a longer and a bountiful life. According to Rosalie, Bella was throwing all of this away. This mindset that Rosalie has is seen shared with a lot of ideas that Edward has as well. As Edward is the mind reader of the family, the thoughts that other people have around him do influence him a lot. And one of the biggest influences he had was Rosalie. Could see that a lot of things that mattered so deeply to Rosalie was something that Bella, being only 17 years of age, could not appreciate. So that is why he felt that being an immortal, it was his duty to let Bella have every experience of her life and prevent her from giving up this soul. A lot of times in the book, Edward makes it a point to get back to this thought that no matter how much he feels attracted to Bella, no matter how much he feels safe with her, there has to be one point in time where he has to get up and leave. Midnight Sun has a lot of verbalization. Verbalization is a tool that a lot of authors use to give the thoughts that have been going on in a character's head. Edward is what I would like to call an overthinker. And no, I am not using this word very lightly. When you read this book, Edward has a thought and Edward has to think about every minute detail related to a decision he's taking for himself or any decision he's taking according to Bella. He has to overthink every word that he speaks. He has to analyze every thought that any person around Bella or Edward is having. So there are a lot of pages which are just the verbalization and his internal purgatory, his struggle with Bella's scent and his struggle of staying with her or leaving her are seen. So now coming to the bad. Being a 750 page book, not every chapter and not every turn of the page is thrilling and exciting. Once you reach kind of the middle of the book, there has already been a lot of repetition from Twilight. So all the flashbacks or the conversations that Edward and Bella had have been repeated, which of course is consistent with the story, but it also gets kind of boring. There are a lot of parts where you feel that the storyline has been stretched. This was the part where even I had to leave the book for a day or two and then come back to it. So in the middle of the book, it kind of becomes slow. Also, there were a lot of parts where I was constantly rolling my eyes. The two main reasons why I was doing that was one, Edward seriously is in need of therapy. And by therapy, I mean all the issues that he has had. Maybe as a modern century girl, I do not agree with the ideologies that he has about his self-image, about the things that are happening around him. However, I can sympathize from where Edward is coming from, but that does not mean that I completely agree to his ideologies. So that part was something that made me constantly roll my eyes. I wanted this man to just take a break and just stop analyzing everything in his life and let it go. So those bits became very tedious for me. The second part where I was rolling my eyes constantly was the honeymoon period that the two characters experience. So once Edward and Bella clarify everything out while going from Port Angeles back to Forks in their car, and she gets all the theories about Edward being a vampire, how that came into being, how all the accidents were explained. After that, the next 100 pages that follow are that lovey-dovey relationship, honeymoon, initial period that they have. So that was pretty much boring for me to read. It was like sitting next to two pining lovers. So that was a little irritating and that part was a little slow for me to read. I was looking forward to the more exciting and the more deep psychological issues that Edward was facing, because as a reader that interests me more. However, that was my own personal take. Having said that, there were a lot of places where Stephenie Meyer redeemed herself. One part for me was the legend of Persephone and Hades, and how Edward identified himself with Hades as the lord of the underworld, the god of darkness and damnation, and Bella was Persephone, the goddess of light, happiness, and how her sunshine and how her happiness actually converted Edward from a cold-hearted vampire to a normal human being, I could say. This legend heavily features as the cover of the Midnight Sun as a pomegranate. I explained the story and the theory behind it and why this pomegranate was chosen as one of my other YouTube videos. So don't forget to check out that legend before you go. The end of the book sees the thriller action series where James, that is the hunter vampire, is after Bella's life because he wants to kill Bella and teach Edward a lesson. Because Edward had denied Bella's blood to James when they were playing baseball in the meadow. The entire scene of the chase as how Edward and Alice's superpowers help them to track down James, how he eludes them, and how they end up in Florida where there is a grand theft auto, and how they stage a murder scene to convince the human police, something that Stephenie Meyer has given a great deal of thought while writing. So that part for me redeemed the book. Now coming to the ugly. By ugly, I mean there were a lot of things in this book that did not make me feel comfortable as a writer. And some of those instances include, firstly, when Edward is stalking Bella. So Edward in this book uses a lot of terms like the human rules don't apply to him, he's a vampire. So sniffing around Bella's room, entering Bella's room when she's sleeping at night are some of the things that I did not like. I would be lying if I say that as a teenager when I was first reading this book it was all romantic and lovey-dovey. But 10 years later, having grown up and seeing what the world actually is, these are the concepts that I was not comfortable with. Yes, Stephenie Meyer had to be consistent for her storyline. Could she have written it differently? Well, I would leave that for the author to know. The other ugly thing about this book was the concept and the main psychological issue that Edward was facing. And that was the hero complex. So Edward feels that he is an immortal and it is his duty to do what is best for Bella, and he is very constricted with the ideologies that are surrounding his mindset. He feels that it is his moral duty to do what is right for her because she, being a human and being puny and being little, inexperienced, does not know what is best for her. So that part of the story I did not completely agree with. Yes, I understand the concepts and the mindset from where Edward is coming from, but these were the concepts that I really did not like. The entire concept of stalking and going into her house when she's not around or when she's sleeping at night was something that made me feel uncomfortable. So all in all, there are a lot of things in this book which were amazing, a lot of things which were given their absolute due. Loads of concepts which were misconstrued initially but were explained very well in this book. We get a very detailed account of how Edward feels about himself and about Bella and about the whole concept of a human falling in love with the vampire. The middle of the book for me was little boring, so I needed to take a break before I could start the next chapter. There were a lot of things which did not make me feel too comfortable, and I wish these were not in the book. But I understand why Stephenie Meyer played a spin on this concept because Edward, being such an immortal, having turned 70 years ago, has a lot of societal issues and a lot of issues with his own self-image and the hero complex that he suffers from, so she had to give that the due as well. If you're a fond reader like me, just be sure of the fact that this book might take a lot more patience to finish than the other books that you've generally read. There are a lot of deep psychological issues in this book that Stephenie Meyer unravels with her writing. The verbalization that Stephenie Meyer uses to give due to the mindset of the characters and how Edward is influenced with people around him being a mind reader, how a lot of concepts of his past have still not left him being an immortal, he cannot shake those. So all in all, I would say this book is a good read. My only advice to you would be just be a little more patient with this book. It is not as fast paced as you would have imagined. But 10 to 12 years down the lane, having released the last book in 2008 and now releasing the Twilight Saga Midnight Sun is something that I really am thankful to Stephenie Meyer for. One of the most beautiful things that Stephenie Meyer has done in this book as an end to the Twilight Saga series is in the acknowledgements. So where she thanks her authors and her family members for supporting her through this journey, she also has given a blank space. I hope you can see that. She has also given a blank space that reads, "And finally, the readers who were so patiently eager for this book. I never would have finished this without your support. You belong to this page. Please write your name on the line below and give yourself a high five." This was really a beautiful gesture by Stephenie Meyer to give a blank space for all the readers and the Twilight fans like me to write their names down below. This kind of made me feel like I was a part of this journey, which I was, and being a twihard, I have followed her religiously. Yeah, as you have seen, I definitely have written my name below on this. because of course I'm not going to leave an opportunity where I can write my name as a Twilight fan. So this made me feel super special as well. So all in all, I absolutely loved the good parts of this book. I was okay with the bad ones. I could understand where all of the characters were coming from. I don't know just yet if I could get used to the uncomfortable part. However, thank you to Stephenie Meyer for giving us this book, which has come after 12 years of releasing Breaking Dawn. Having had lost hope in the middle somewhere that we would ever get our hands on this book, thank you for giving us this, and thank you for making 2020 a little more bearable. For all of you who have watched this review today, don't forget to leave your comments down below if you've read the book, and also please don't forget to give your recommendations for books to me. I'll be waiting to have a conversation with you in the comments down below. Until then, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and share this video with your friends and family. I'll see you next time. Bye bye. Take care.